All right, welcome to the Pat Life Podcast. I am Patrick, as always, and with me today I have Mr. Lucas King, or LC King. So we'll get both of them in there. And yeah, I'm excited to have him on today. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming in. So for those who don't know, I'll just give a quick breakdown of how I've gotten to know about Lucas and just the things that he's been really throwing out there, and a lot of good information in regards to just this plane that we live on, or realm, however you want to look at it, in regards to the, the galvanic battery, the galvanic cell. And I'll let him explain much better than I can, as well as farming, especially in these times, seeing that we are seeing an increase of people taking on their own farming and their own agriculture. You have a business, correct, as well?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
So I started a
yeah.
small farm. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to dive in. So, for anyone listening and interested in either of these, you're going to enjoy this one here. So, that being said, how are you overall, man? Talk to me. What's going on down by you?
No, it's pretty straightforward. Nothing has changed too much in my world. Just still doing the same thing. So just been farming, and my wife does catering. So we work hand in hand in that way, and yeah, it's been going well. We just sort of changed some of the business stuff
Right.
to handle these different sort of changing atmosphere.
Yeah,
Mm.
man. Well, that's if you'd like to, do you want to maybe dive into that first, just kind of how you got into the farming, and just kind of your setup that you currently have?
Yeah, well, for a long time, I wanted to be sort of self-sufficient, do my own thing, have my own land and things like that. So when the opportunity arose, I bought a house that was pretty cheap, and worked to renovate it and get it to a standard, livable standard. It wasn't great, but yeah, from there I sort of designed, sort of the functioning of the farm sort of aspects of things, and changed driveways and that. So I'm in a small town, and basically I was looking for a way to do the sustainable thing, or do uh, be more independent, and I didn't really know how to go about it. So I sort of started looking at the permaculture routes, as well as I looked at uh, so the food forest type thing. And then I came across some work by Curtis Stone, the urban
Mhm.
farmer. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and JM Fortier.
Hmm.
They were the main two, and once I saw their process, it was it wasn't quite permaculture, but it wasn't large farming either. So it was this nice little happy medium that you could still um, you know produce your own food and make some money at the same time. So it could be a um, you had both worlds. So from there, I basically started learning as much as I could. I spent probably maybe 3 or 4 months just learning everything I could, watching the YouTube videos and going all through it before I even sort of started to implement it. And
Hmm.
then I was working full time at that stage, and then from there I just sort of slowly built up and progressed, and started following their lead, and everything that they said, this is what you need to do, I sort of started implementing. And from there, it's the business has grown. And at the same time, my wife was doing uh, doing the catering side of things, and
Hmm.
so it started to build on itself. And we thought, it'd be great to have the farm, and then funnel this fresh organic food into the kitchen, and
Right.
work from there. So we built a commercial kitchen at home, and
Wow.
so it's been a long process, but it's good now. It's really good.
So how many acres again are you working on? I've seen some of the videos and you talk about it, but I forgot the acreage.
Yeah, so my farm's probably about a third of an acre, or maybe a bit more.
Wow.
So it's really just like a house block and a bit. It's not huge, but it's enough for me to work with hand tools, and I have a casual employee that comes and helps
Mhm.
do a bit of harvest and things for markets, and so.
But you guys are, how much are you right now in your harvesting season? Are you in harvesting season right now, or are you guys all around year round harvesting?
Yeah, well, I can go pretty much all round, but the growth does slow, especially through the winter. We're coming into autumn now, so
Okay.
our sort of summer stuff's coming to an end, and then I'll transition into sort of autumn veggies,
Mhm.
broccolis and cabbages and things like that. So
Okay. And how much are you producing, would you say, in your prime harvest? Like what on that third of an acre?
um, well, it just depends how much I'm selling. More to the point, it's
Yeah.
the market that dictates how much. But I can produce huge amounts if I want to.
So
So, um, but I sort of tailored this year to more the veggie box side of things
mhm,
rather than saying producing stuff for commercial businesses such as pubs and
right.
um, cafes and things like that. And the market around here, because it's such a small town, it's not as good as it could be. That's for sure. If I
Yeah.
was in a city or a larger town, you could just
Yeah.
keep funneling out huge amounts of food.
Well, it's kind of similar, like you said, with Curtis Stone. I watch him pretty regularly as well. I love just
Mhm.
listening to him talking about it. I'm new to the world, so similar to your situation. Just looking
Yeah.
to go, how do I just start? And I think one of the things that attracted me to just many things of your videos, but in regards to the farming aspect, was, as you said, like I remember you saying in one of your videos, like, "Hey, I'm new to this. I'm gonna just take in the information and not have an excuse for why I can't do something." And then it's, because that's the biggest thing, right? Is, oh, I can't do permaculture. I don't have the land, or I can't do this because I don't have that. And, I think with now sustainability being so popular, people trying to find answers, as much as the Curtis Stones and those people are really good for learning, it's seeing people actually being like, oh, this is somebody who's taken it and is newer to the game, but
Yeah.
now has the experience. Do you know what I mean? And with that, do you know a lot of people in that same boat as you because of that? Or
Mm, not really. I do know another farmer that does the same thing as me, and he's in another town.
okay,
But I don't know that many people that do the same thing as me. And yeah, well, that's right. You'd basically try and learn as much as you can, and then work out the steps you need to take. And it really doesn't cost that much, and you really don't need that much land.
right,
Even if you could, like Curtis was doing, he was basically using other people's land to
right,
build his farm. So, and then it went from there. So there's many different ways to go about it. I just happen to have a large block with the house that I bought, and so I
right.
designed with that. But you know, the simple, it really is very simple to start with, even if you were doing microgreens or something like that, which
Mhm.
is, do you know what I mean? So
Yo,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, that's the thing. Is so just to kind of give you a little understanding more about me is my fiance and I, we were in New York City for a long time. And obviously, once we had our son, we moved out of the city with all this stuff. But one of the things was not having much space. So you're like, oh, what can I do? What can I do? And I wasn't fully into the gardening world. But when I started to read and see and just what people were doing, it's like, oh, there's so much you can even do in a city. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, as you said, it's those necessary progressional steps to just going, all right, let me just know what it's like to breed, sow something and bring it to harvest.
Yeah.
And because
And it's great.
it's quite a feeling of knowing that you've been a part of this circle of life and putting back to the earth in order to receive. So I think for anyone listening who is new, it's like anything you get a hook to, like an addiction. There is definitely an addiction to the concept of putting yourself in the dirt, farming, or just even growing some microgreens in the window. And
Yeah.
have you been having more conversations, and maybe not with farmers, but people asking you about now what are some necessary steps that I can do? What are some tips that you might have through your experiences or anything like that?
Uh, Yeah, well, there's the general public, as you sort of sell to them or something like that at a market, you can actually, they'll ask you little bits and pieces about what you do when you start things and that. And that's been the real process. Part of the process is learning the seasons, learning your
Mhm.
climate. And that's something that you can read it on paper, but still, until you start to actually go through those seasons, go through that sort of cycle, you
Right.
you you can really start to understand what's actually happening in that way. And learning about soil biology and how to build up your soil, what's working, what isn't. So
Mhm.
your type of soil and that sort of thing. So there's little nuances that no one really can teach you because you're in your own particular climate. So that's where the hands-on trial and error comes into play as well. And then sussing out your own market and what people like and what they
Yeah.
don't like. And um,
That's a whole
so
nother level right there is now as you are going into market is playing into, well, what's thriving, what is getting people's attention, why is it getting people's attention? And as you said, okay, well, are we in the season for that to be prime? I can only imagine as you're learning, building your farm, building your commercial, kitchen and all those things. Now it's like, all right, let me look at the marketing aspect. Now that I've kind of started figuring all this out. Yeah, no, that's well. Going back to soil, I've been working on a documentary, a piece of a documentary with, I don't know if you know Tom Barnett. Um,
Yep.
so we're working on this documentary, and one of the big pieces that I'm focusing on is the food industry and food,
Mhm.
understanding, labels, how they're very many ways misleading. And I've been talking to a lot of local farmers throughout the country, and one of the big things is just constant talking about the soil and understanding on these big farms, right? Is you're getting organic spinach on like 1,000-acre farm. And it's like, just think about, the juxtaposition there. It's like organic, but you have a
Well,
thousand
they're
acres that
chemical.
so there was a lot of talk about soil, and there's been, understanding the seasons and understanding more so, if you're bringing in, you know, organic pesticides from other places to cover such a large scale, well, what's that doing to the water? What's that doing to the actual, as you said, the local soil? And there's so many of these factors that, like myself included, I'm still there as consumers, you're not quite sure about. Was there anything, so kind of leading in, is there anything just with your location that you're noticing about your soil? I don't know what zone are you in down in Australia? I don't know.
It's like a temperate zone.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah. So is there anything
we don't
specific?
really get any snow or anything like
Yeah,
that. So
yeah.
yeah.
Is there anything with regards to like your soil in that type of zone or maybe a lot hotter climates that you're noticing that's kind of standing out to you? And then obviously how you
Well, my soil is just a sand over clay, and it gets hydrophobic. So especially with the sand, and that process usually happens through the summer as well, where it sort of cooks and things.
mm,
But it's when you have sand like that, you basically just need to funnel in as much organic material as possible to build that soil up, get it to hold water, and um, you know, so it really just comes down for me, not overthinking it too much, finding good compost, lathering it on as much as you possibly can to build that soil as good as you can get it to get the biology in there. So the other issue I use the mains water here, and that has sort of chlorine in it. Doesn't have anything really else, and has some salts. Um, so that is um this can be problematic as well, but again, when you build up the organic material and have a healthy soil, they can handle lots of different things as well. So
right.
um and that's all I've been doing. I'll strip a bed and then put a ton of compost on it, seed into the compost, and away I go again. And if you keep flipping the beds like that, doing sort of the no-till thing. So I do the no-till where you're not trying to break up any sort of the fungal strands and things like that.
Yeah.
I sort of think of the fungal stuff as more like the brain synapses of the soil.
Right.
So there's seems to be a balance between the fungi's and the bacterias as well, so they work symbiotically, and you don't want to be breaking them up, turning your soil over, exposing these levels that these different biologies would be living in the soil to, constant turning and that sort of thing that just brings that process, it stunts that process. So it's just a matter of throwing the compost on top and planting into it and
So
keeping
when
that
you
cycle up.
so when you strip the bed, you're just stripping and then adding the compost, not even like raking or anything like that? Because I know Curtis has talked about the raking aspect as well.
Yeah, I'll weed hoe it if I need to. I'm not going, overboard and never touching the soil. I'll weed hoe the first, inch or so of it. So,
Okay.
um, yeah, and then, if I need to rake the bed back into shape, so it's easier to seed and things like that. So, yeah,
Okay. Nice.
yeah.
And how many beds do you have on your property?
Well, I've got three plots, and there's about 16 beds on each,
Oh,
and they're about 24 meters long. I'm not sure what that is in feet, but
yeah, it's about, I think, what is it? 24 meters. Oh, geez. I should know this. It's like, what, 10 feet?
nearly
Like 10, 12 feet?
no,
24
nearly
meters.
it
What's
would be
meters?
meter is three times, I
Oh,
think.
hold on.
So it would be close to 90 or something like that,
Oh,
maybe.
okay. My
Is that-
my
yeah,
math is off. Not my forte. So, well,
that's all
that's
right. Me
how
too.
how wide are you been keeping them? Like three,
Well,
4?
I go with that standard size that Curtis and those recommend, which is basically the size of it's a 60 inches,
Okay,
and it's based on the
got it.
walking tractor. So I have a walking tractor as well,
Mhm.
so rotary hoe, and it has a couple of different implements on it, some to form up the beds a little bit, and I got another one which is like a mower type thing,
All right.
and that's really been really good too. So any crop that's gone to seed or is I don't need anymore, is looking shabby, I'll just mow it down and it churns it up.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
flail mower, and that'll put the organic material straight back into the soil.
Oh, that's awesome, man. And
Yeah.
so, are you with? Because I get so many questions because, as you said, you learn from other people. You're starting. I just love the journey of things. I've worked in the personal training business for 10 years now, so I love people's journeys, and I make films as well. So like I just like hearing these stories because we always think they're always in a movie or it was the person in this TV show, but it's like you can do it. It's about putting the time in, going through the trials and tribulations. So I have tons of questions with your business and everything, and I know you brought things to markets. Being that you have had this, self-sustaining type business, are you seeing a lot more with the interactions with people that it's becoming more communal? Like you're seeing the same people, you're starting to see a growing, I guess, community with, as well as I know your wife's catering business. Are you seeing
Mm.
a little bit more connection in that regard, or is it kind of still just
Not so
business?
much where I am.
Okay.
Um, these sort of communities are a little bit more set in stone with their ideologies and things like that.
Okay.
So, but there are regulars that come and buy from me, and support me all the time. But it really is a learning curve for, well, our type of society, to actually, take those fresh veggies and cook with them
Right.
or, use them to it's a sort of the convenience of supermarkets and things like that does really play a part in how attracted they are to coming to a farm like this. And so it's just been a little bit of different sort of climate for me that way.
Well, like anything else, it's an adjustment phase, as you said. I can imagine as you're getting used to looking at the seasons, and this will kind of transition us into the other point of conversation. It's like you have to just know, okay, hey, you don't really know until you're in it, right? It's the adjustment of, all right, it's starting off, they're learning, people are coming in, they're so used to the market, going to the market store place. It's just like anything else, it just takes time to really now look at it and go, okay, what's here,
Yeah,
how do these people move, right? Because people can be pretty you can understand their next move. You know what I mean?
yeah, well, it's just my environment. So, I'm just working with that, and um, it seems to be a better function for me to actually funnel food through to the catering side of things. And
Mhm.
Alex will then she'll make pre-made salads and send them to shops and things like that. So there's that convenience that's still,
Right.
present for the other people and stuff like that. So,
That's awesome.
if I was in a different sort of um, maybe city, or more alternative type people that were interested in it, health conscious people, I think I'd probably do a lot better in
Yeah.
what I'm doing. But and I think as time progresses with the state of economy and things like that, well, there's going to be a lot more people that start to filter in and
Yeah.
see that you're not only getting a good product, you're getting it's fresh, and it's with it's a reasonable price. So you know,
Yeah. Well, I mean, here in the States, like I said, we're on the East Coast. There's a lot of CSAs out here.
yep.
And, when we moved, we were just looking into some of the CSAs and they're all just completely packed. The ones
Mm,
that we looked at quite a few, and, there's a huge waiting list. And some of the people I've spoken to were like, oh, yeah, this just with everything that's happened, it just kind of boom.
mm,
So I think a lot of people are, as you said, very much already coming into that, realizing that also obviously with food prices in stores going up, that's definitely catching people's attention to go, all right, well, what do I do? And that's why for me, as I said, I wanted to bring you on and just kind of hearing your story, because everyone, as we said, thinks it has to be, oh, I have to have this big farm like I see in the movies or I see in,
mm.
on the cartons that I'm looking at. I can't do that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It can start so much smaller.
I don't think that's probably the way we need to be going anyway. We need to be going to small, localized farms. And yeah, I think, we haven't really seen the effects of true inflation yet,
Yeah,
um, and how that's going to play out. And when that does, I think these type of farms will be far more competitive than anything else. And
absolutely. Oh yeah,
um,
oh, sorry, go on.
yeah, and I just think in what they will bring as well, with these small farms, will bring community, and that's what the world really needs right now is small communities, independence, using different forms of money, going back to silver, or things like that, where um, independence is really brought about by their own community living. So
Absolutely.
I think we're going to see a resurgence of that too.
Yeah,
That's the only way, in my mind, that things can become back to some sort of normality.
absolutely, man. Yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things, across the world where you're seeing and hearing about this idea of, okay, well, how do we create a system that is going to be where people not only are feeling, close knit, protected, but again, healthy, right?
Mm.
Because as you're talking about local farms and just even having somebody, maybe it's not local, but just a little bit away, just knowing you can go there, the quality, that you're actually getting the vitamins and nutrients. As we know, in these big plots of land, the soil is getting turned over in such a way and not really taken care of, that it's like the soil is dead. So they're
Oh, it
just
is dead. That's right. That's they use it as a growing medium. It's not a living thing, which is completely different sort of psychology to a small farm and how they approach it. Yeah.
well,
So
it doesn't have, as you said, the neurons, the brain waves, the fungus, the bacteria that the soil thrives on, right? All those different pieces that, yeah, a lot of us aren't aware of. And you kind of think like, oh, I'm looking at something that looks like what I need. But in reality, when you understand the land, the soil, as you said, it completely is a whole other thing. I think I've heard it from many places that people go, yeah, if someone who is actually like native to land might come into a grocery store, like, what is this? Like,
mm.
this isn't food, so
And the attention to detail that you get when you're on, got a small plot and you're working on that yourself. So there's an attention to detail that you just don't get when you're, driving large machinery and things like that. So
yeah,
that is, it's a blanket statement or blanket sort of act for, this large amount of land. And so, that's the thing as well. So you're paying attention to what's happening, what's growing well, what isn't growing well, and you got a diversity, so. And you also see lots of bugs and lots of different things in your garden that start to come in. And um, that sometimes they're a bit annoying, but
Yeah.
I just leave them be. Sometimes I'll have a salads full thousands of lady beetles and things like that, and I'm just like, or buildups of even pests. And at that point I'm like, well, they're doing something, and then they're going to bring in something else if they come
Right.
out, start to be out of control. So you
Mhm.
don't worry about it, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's so as you were saying, going back to the permaculture, like, yes, to the idea, it sounds like, of that permaculture that maybe you had in mind originally, as you said, small scale, large scale. If you're giving back to the soil, or giving back, you're bringing life to the area around you. Naturally how it's always worked. It's going to give back. It's going to find its niche. Animals, pests, whatever are going to start to come in.
yeah,
It's creating that ecosystem that's meant to thrive. And I think,
yeah,
very much so, we in our mind is, oh, we don't want any of these things here. It has to be untouched. Well, how do you do that? The GMOs, the
mm,
pesticides, the herbicides, and even then, it's bringing on new things that you don't know how to necessarily handle. So it's like, put more on. This might get them,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah. Well, that's it. And we don't know. Nature's so complex in how it operates. We don't know what they're doing in a lot of ways,
right,
and so nature's always producing an abundance. It's always producing health. The ultimate ecosystem is a forest.
yeah,
And so we do the opposite to that. We create lawns. It's a monoculture. It's kept
right,
at this artificial stage in where it shouldn't be. So if this type of farming is still a stepping stone to see, then go to the permaculture, and then from there it's really to food forest, because the forest is the ultimate ecosystem.
right.
It's self-sufficient. It can handle different elements. And so I think that's the important process. And we try and keep these things stunted at a monoculture, at a
Right.
really low level of sort of even vibration, if you want to look at it in that sense.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very much into vibration, frequency, resonance. I see it with my job all the time, and just how people come in, just their energies. But they might be like, "Yeah, no, I'm good, let's go." But you feel that they aren't necessarily ready. You feel that something's wrong. It's like when you're in a room and someone's in a bad mood, you're like, "Oh, geez, it's a little stuffy in
Mm.
here."
Yeah, yeah.
So but that's the same thing with land, and it's something that's inherent and innate in all of us. But like anything else, if it's not exercised, it's a muscle, an intuition that's not connected with, we don't see that, right? We just are so focused on the material aspect of, like, oh, look at this clear, perfect lawn. And for me, I'm even looking at it now of like, they've taken all the leaves away. This is compost that's now gone. And now it's just they're leaving it open. And it's like little things like that I start thinking about. Or it's just,
Yeah, I see people like, cut their lawn clippings and then take it to the dump. I'm just
oh
like,
yeah, you're like,
what's
no, no.
going on?
Oh yeah, well, we're in a nice quaint apartment complex, but I've been trying to, with the around the apartment, I've been trying to put things together and just doing something small, just trying to get my hands in the dirt and learn. But as I'm going around, I see a lot of these houses when I'm on a run or something, and I see like lawn clippings, branches, pine needles. I'm just sitting there. I'm like, I kind of want to just pick it up and walk back, but it's but for me, what's been cool, and this kind of maybe transitioning us into the other conversation, was learning how to just understand tracking the sun.
Mhm,
Because of, right, plants, life needs sun, it needs that energy. And
mhm.
looking at, like, okay, well, where's the house, where's the apartment, how much does this plot of sun get, right? And you understand. But it becomes such a beautiful thing, where even just starting to connect with the few things in life that you can't hide, the sun, the moon, and truth,
Mm.
looking at it going like, I want to know where they are. I want to find how they move. I want to see why is it bright now and here. So that's kind of your forte, man. So do you want to kind of shift into that world?
Well, yeah, well, that's it's a super interesting story. Like, and it really is the story of the zodiac, and how that process of the sun moving through the seasons. So, that's what really sort of got me interested in it. All these. It was really the zodiac and
Mhm.
what it sort of meant, and so I went into that rabbit hole of looking at. Astrology and things like that. And I got a bit disconcerted with the whole, uh, telling the future and all these sort of things that are associated with it. And at the end of the day, I said, well, this doesn't make any sense to me. There's no real reason why, you're making all these associations with, say, planets and energies and all that sort of stuff. So what is it actually about? Where's the foundation of this? Is it nonsense? And I didn't think it was nonsense. I didn't think it was. I thought it was actually very old material that I was looking at. But through time, it sort of got it changed how we saw it or what its connection was.
Mhm.
And so I just sort of threw out all that stuff that I'd learned, and I just looked at the zodiac itself, and I'm like, okay, what's it trying to tell me? What is this thing? Is this thing trying to explain? And so, when I looked at it and there's these planetary associations with metals, I'm like, well, why would you associate planets with metals? It
Mhm.
doesn't make the two don't really seem to go hand in hand. And so I looked at the list of metals that associated with the planets, so Saturn, lead, Jupiter, tin, Venus, copper, Sun was gold, and Moon, silver. And there's a certain order of these seven planets and the seven metals. And I thought, well, why are they in that order? And so when I done that, when I started typing in and looking for the order of these planets, that's when I came across the galvanic cell. And the galvanic cell, for people that don't know, is basically a battery. And so at that stage, I wasn't really looking for a world model or anything like that. I was just trying to find out about the zodiac. And so that then opened up a whole range of information that, I wasn't really expecting. And so from there, I basically started to place the battery layout and onto our world.
Mhm.
So that's where this thing originated from.
That's awesome, man. So maybe if you want to dive into more a little the specifics of the galvanic cell, the galvanic battery, and how you kind of set up this model.
Well, the galvanic cell again is basically a battery. So it has two, say, um, cups full of electrolyte, and then you'd stick two anode and cathode in it, which are two metal strips, and you join them to by a wire, and you would have a salt bridge that joins those two electrolytes, and that's your basic form of a battery. And so when I was looking at that galvanic cell, um, and because I'd been studying the zodiac and the four element type thing, I thought, oh, okay, so maybe the anode or the negative terminal of the battery is related to the moon.
Right.
And then from there, I went, okay, so maybe the cathode, the positive terminal of the battery is related to the sun. And then I saw the electrolyte, which is the water that these sits in. And I thought, oh, well, it's a salt water. And I'm like, well, that's the oceans. And then the salt bridge, that became the earth. So we had those four elements. In the galvanic cell related to earth, water, air, and fire, and then related to earth, oceans, the moon and the sun.
Right.
So from that sort of basic schematic, then I started to see, um, well, what are the components of the galvanic cell that actually make this thing function, and how could that actually apply to our world? So hopefully that's explaining. It's a little bit difficult without pictures and things like that, but for people, but
Well, I mean, it is very, it, on the surface level, it actually is very simplistic. Obviously, there's so much more that goes into it, but like, as you said, we're constantly getting a positive and negative charge all the time, right? That, like, for people who maybe don't understand, it's you just ask yourself a simple logical question: are you getting the same type of energy, just emotionally field, from a sun compared to a moon? Well, of course not. It's totally different. Another example: can you look directly into a sun at high noon?
mm,
Majority of people know.
mm,
Some people maybe have some ability, but the moon, right? You can see it. They're both a source of light. They're well, energy.
yeah,
So, it is at a very functional level. Like you said, everyone knows the ocean. Well, majority of people should know that the ocean has a lot of salt in it. So it's very, salt water. And then, as you
yeah,
said, the one thing that really stood out to me was that bridge of Earth being that, as you said, as I said, that bridge. And, I guess with your kind of, unless you had something you wanted to add real quick, but I know you were doing your own tests with that. You were starting to, I saw some of the videos and things you were posting with, you were starting to put together your own basically
yeah,
batteries. Yeah. If you want to share more
yeah.
about that.
Yeah, well, I was trying to is sort of I'll probably come back to it,
Mhm.
but I found difficulty trying to get um, the the heat and doing the things I wanted to within a vacuum chamber.
Yeah.
And the reason for the vacuum chamber is because of the density, or the pressure. We have a higher pressure as we get closer to sea level, and then a lower pressure as we go up.
Right.
And so, the things that I've found with this process, with this unfurling of this electrical universe, or world we're in, is that it had so many correlations to so many different things. It had correlations to soil biology, it has correlations to how plants function, and it
Right.
has correlations to mythology, and the way that they saw this, the positive and negative of, say, the masculine and the feminine, the right and the left, and all these ideas really start to coalesce. And even when you're talking about the sodium and potassium within a galvanic cell, well, you're looking at the sodium potassium pump in your own cells.
Yep.
So it's not just um, you know and it's all based on a real thing that we use every day. We use batteries, we use them in our phones and things like that, so it's
Right.
all based on a real thing. And that also parallels to so many different, from medical to, so that's what I found fascinating. It wasn't just that you could apply it to our world, but it was actually bringing in all these different sort of sciences into a holistic viewpoint. And I just found that so fascinating. um and even when you're talking, when I was looking at it as well, you could see tie-ins to the technology that we use, from
Yeah.
vacuum the older vacuum tubes, and even how to derive energy from the system.
Oh yeah.
So
No, go on.
I
Sorry.
think it is, at the end of the day, once this model sort of, people start researching it for themselves, and that's really what I want, is for people to go, okay, this is what he's done, let's check it, let's give him some feedback if he got some stuff wrong. Let's do my own research on it and see if it's legitimate. I'm not saying this is it, but there are so many correlations that people can find their own path with it as well. So
Well,
I think it's,
yeah.
yeah, go.
No, sorry. I think that's what for me has been, to your channel, to these things you're talking about. specifically going back to the sodium potassium pump, I've done that's more into the world that I've been just putting all my energy into is the trainer, because one of the big things is looking at, okay, well, why does the body do certain things? Why do we know? What do we know? And through my journey and really trying to understand these pieces, I came across the Gerson method. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yep.
So I was one of our really close friends has the he went to the first module, basically seminar, and completed the course, and he has this pamphlet. So we were staying with him for a time being, and I was reading it, and just one thing I just came across, and this is also while I was watching your videos, was I don't know if you're familiar with the it's the association induction hypothesis by this gentleman named Gilbert Ningling, doctor, is or a scientist or something. But anyway, he essentially was saying the way that there's no actual data to show that the sodium potassium pump, the way we're told, actually is working the way they say it is.
Mm.
And there was also backed by Dr. Friedman W. Cope, as well as Dr. Michael Damadian. And what they ended up doing is taking a cell, and they basically like poisoned it so all its functions weren't working, but they were basically passing things were still passing through it. It was working just fine. These pumps, quote unquote, everything was able to work. And they were saying, well, how is this happening if there's no ATP? There's no mitochondria, so there's no ATP. There's nothing to actually create this pump. So what is it? And so one of the things that came about was understanding water, the structure of water within our cells, within our body, which is absolutely a thing. How do we know? Look at how, specifically looking at trees. How does water move up a tree going against, the quote unquote gravity? Well, you're looking at structured water. Dr. Tom Cowan talks a lot about this and understanding how that process works. But one of the things is talking about disease and all these other pieces is when you create basically just a disease to the cells, you're seeing obviously this imbalance of this, as you said, this battery's out of whack. There's less potassium in the cell than there should be. There's more sodium, and then there's more water, which creates an inflammation, which now understanding just from a battery sense, that battery can't work properly. It's not working at full capacity. So these things really started making sense to me and really going, wow. So, the inflammation process, the way, the human body starts to lag, like literally the battery starts to, like, it's people be like, oh, I'm running on fumes, or, we use these words and verbiage that you start realizing you're like, I'm kind of talking about myself as a battery. So that was something that just was super fascinating to me. So if anything you want to maybe add on to that, I know I kind of went off there.
Well, there's, and then there's the associations with sulfur and what sulfur is actually doing and how it's actually reacting, or the secret fire with the metals to create these reactions, producing of, hydrogen, or for the anode, or produce oxygen. And, why are we breathing in the oxygen, and what's that process really actually doing?
Yeah.
Is that the helping the negative charge of the voltage in our body? So it's very interesting. I think there's so much more to learn about these processes, and I've only just
Yeah.
touched on it and try to put it out in the best way I can, that people can grasp it and really sort of take it to the next level. And the other thing that was like one of the major things that I should probably explain, especially when we're talking about anodes and cathodes and the planetary metals, and them being possibly metals as well, and it being refined through electrolysis and things like that, atmospheric electrolysis. But when you start to look at sort of high voltages and high currents, well, then you're able to get levitation as well.
Mhm.
So I just try and add that in there too, just to that's a big part of this physicality of these processes as well. So
Well, it goes to show you too, when you were, talking about levitation. I've never done it. I don't know how to do it, but when you look at old literature, when you look at, as you were saying, looking the people who really understood, as Crow 777 would say, the sky clock, or just,
Mm.
the Zodiac, and understanding connection with it, knowing what, where we fall, where we're currently at, understanding when to plant, when to grow, when to harvest, but then also like when to, kind of like, yeah, he was talking about something specific of like knowing when to it's gonna slip my mind, but it was like something so like you wouldn't, there was, the comparison was like, how does that compare? But when you realize how it really does affect everything, purely because it's an energy, as you said, it's an electricity, and how that's going to affect every piece, you start to realize the potential that people in the past were striving and completing, that we can't even fathom. As you said, you're only scratching the surface, but I start to then ask, how known was this? How,
Very known, I'd
obvious, you
say.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
And it also gives a different sort of take on the zodiac as well. Working with it rather than it actually gives it a definition of frequency as
mhm,
well. So how are these planets actually interacting with them, galvanically, and who's sending energy to who, and the frequencies, are they actually blocking each other, and it gives a direction to where these planetary frequencies might be traveling. So that gives another, it's an actual, in that sense it's like a weather chart
yeah,
rather than this future. So you can go, oh, okay, so this is the interactions, the energetic interactions, and what does that mean? Well, I'm not sure yet, truthfully, and maybe other people will dive into it and start to bring back these correlations. um,
yeah,
and the other thing that I think was most important, when I was looking at this, you had the positive and negative, and then you had this balance point between, or the connection between the sun and the moon, or the connection between the positive and negative. And this relates back to all the mythologies and these religious sciences, where you have the Trinity. And I
mhm,
think that's a really important concept as well, that like the cell, it needs to have a balance of positive and negative, and it needs to be centered in that. And just like us, we need to
right,
not be too intellectual, not to be too creative, not live too far into the future, not live too far into the past, be in that present moment.
yeah,
And this sort of model actually led me towards that sort of those sort of concepts as well, which I find really, really fascinating.
yeah, man, I do. Well, my name's Patrick, but Pat Life for Present Awareness Training. That's what
Mm.
it stands for. So I'm very much in that too. Honestly speaking, I don't fully understand every bit of it, like in regards to how it's explained, like biblically. Like I'm still trying to learn and understand pieces. There's a lot of, for me to step into and understand knowledge wise. But one part where it makes sense is, as you said, with being present. And I see it in my personal training of, there's the ability to push and be able to listen to the body, and not over pushing yourself to the point of injury. So like that voice inside that says, I can do this. And that voice that's inside, when you're under stress,
Mm.
exercise, whatever the case is, you start to go like, oh my gosh, how longer do I have to hold this? And then it's like, oh, come on, do it, do it. We've all had it to some capacity. So it's learning how to bring those two voices together rather than split them apart. So this is, for me, is where it's made the most sense,
Mm.
just because I've been able to actually apply it and see it in action and actually see positive results. Um, because you're basically splitting the person. You're putting them
Mm.
into a duality essentially. And then what is that third component? Is your breathing. It's putting you into the present moment to
Mm.
understand that these two aren't different. They're of the same thing. They just need to know how, like alchemy, they need to know how to break apart to come back together. And not just
Well,
come back together, but
that's
come back
right.
together better, stronger.
Yeah, and we tend to think that negative means bad and positive means
Right.
it's good, and but when you see the system that I present, or the sun and the moon are sort of reflections or polarities of each other, well, then you see that one can't exist without the other. So
Hmm.
you need that polarity. That polarity actually creates the energy,
Hmm.
that sine waves between the two things. So, and
Right.
it's the same for us. So we need the positive and negative. We need to know things, and we need to try and be in that balance point between the two to make the correct decision. We can't be too intellectual, we can't be too creative, otherwise we'll get off in the clouds. We still need to bring it back into ground level,
Yep.
and we need to join those two forces together within ourselves to, and that's where you operate from, that center point.
Well, what you're seeing also too, to bring it obviously yes, as to the person, but how we're deceived in how we follow just kind of like the mundane, oh, I'm programmed to hear on the news that, oh, I need more alkaline water now. It's in more,
Mm.
it's less acidic. Therefore, give me the most, negative charge water you could possibly think of. And we don't
Yeah.
necessarily understand that, like anything else, it is a balance. And I myself have fallen into these as well at times. And through my journey is learning of like, okay, just because they're saying one side is good or bad, let's really look at, as you were doing with the whole galvanic cell battery, is going, let's look at the bigger picture here. Why is this here? Why is this here? It's not a coincidence. It's not an accident. We need those 2 points. And you start to then understand your body. Oxygen, like, yeah, negative, negative charge is bad. No, oxygen's a negative charge, right? You know what I mean? Like your salt's like, oh, salt's bad. It's like, okay, table salt I would stay away from, but let's look at salt, like the ocean. Let's look at salt in,
In
rock salt,
fertilizers,
fertilizers.
you're putting different salts on your plants. I put I forget the name of it, but for increased magnesium for the tomatoes, things
Yeah.
like that. So the salts are hugely necessary. You can have your cell salts as well
Oh,
for your
absolutely.
body.
Yeah.
So, it's, yeah, it's really yeah, trying to find those balance. And this is an energetic model.
Yeah.
So we're standing back looking at the energies rather than focusing just on one thing. What's
Right.
the energy? What's in, like you would when you're your personal trainer and things like that. What's the person's energy like? How can I work with that? And same with sort of kinesiology or those different modalities. You're trying to get an overview of the person's energy and where there's blockages and things like that. So it all relates, and it's I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. Well, as you said earlier about trying to bring in back a holistic approach to, well, not just farming, but the system that we're in is, like you said, is what we've seen in history is and I know this is fresh in my mind because I was just listening to Crow as well talking about the Zodiac as well, and one thing he did say was, you look at all of these different religions and cultures, and what there was is the separation of just the Zodiac. It's like, oh, they followed basically in Jupiter, like, they're in Mars, and it's like, but this is a whole system. This is
Mm.
all these systems actually working together in symbiosis rather than against each other. But if we start to get into the mindset that this is over here. Sorry, my dog's licking a bowl. Um, so it's like, if we're over here looking at just one piece, you're completely disregarding the rest of, as we say, the holistic system and what we're trying to accomplish. And what that is again, energy, finding that energy that's going to help us thrive, not live in disease, giving back to the earth. Giving it is again life, not disease. So it's just this continuation from your macro to your micro. So
And the other thing that I think is super important, and I've tried to look into and push forth as well, is the idea that they've manipulated our calendar.
yeah.
And when you start to reset where we are in time and space, and then the zodiac starts to play a better role because it's actually in the correct position, so that
Mhm.
you should start in Aries at the springtime and things like that. So they're not just certain actions happen at certain times around the year, and
Right.
these help you understand not only the cycle, but what cultural things need to happen, what celebrations and why you celebrate at these certain times. Um, you know why why is Libra and Virgo to do with the harvest and weights and measures and things like that.
Mhm.
So it gives context, and it actually is a very good teaching tool once it's put into place. It's an
Oh, yeah.
extremely natural teaching tool because it works with the season, and you can do certain things and teach certain things at at certain times,
Yeah.
and it brings context to your
Totally.
life and to the things that you're doing. You're celebrating the harvest. You're celebrating the sun. Say for the spring equinox, you're celebrating the triumph of the sun over the dark.
Right.
Um, you're mourning the sun's death at the winter solstice, and then it's resurrection to
Right.
start bring back the season again. When and you would tailor it to your own season. Do you know what I mean? So your own
Absolutely.
farming season. So these all these things tie hand in hand, and they tie into the sky, to geometry, to
Oh, yeah.
um, and it is a complete science. And the other thing is that I sort of stress is that spirituality and science aren't different.
No.
Not when they're true. When they're true, they are the same thing.
Yep.
And so that concept. I like to drive home for people as well because I think it's really important.
Oh, absolutely. Because I mean, there's a couple things I want to go over, but that point specifically, and I love that, is because when you, as you said, there's so much that we have to still learn. When you take out the idea of spirituality and understanding that, energy, in my opinion, God, in that there is this system that has been created, what you end up having is as I said, a part of an equation that you're not even looking at to solve a problem, solve problems. And when you really see that, when you have spirituality in looking at the world around you, literally, you're, the ground, the soil, the forest, this is your teacher. You really are
Mm,
learning science. You're learning these methods. You're learning hypothesis. You're learning creation. And as simple as, for people who may be like, oh, okay, you're getting off there. It's like, why is the moon? What is that? You know what I mean? And people, now we think, oh, we need to have a specific answer for all these things, which, then it takes out that ability to have wonder and really look at the spiritual side in many of us, which it closes off that door, I guess you can say, that portal. But when you allow that to open up again to whatever capacity, like any child, the wonder, creativity comes back. But then
mm,
there's that intellectual, that analytical, that, a lot of us have, and that's what a lot of scientists should, and hopefully will do, can do, is go, okay, I want to think like I don't know anything. I want to try to look at everything with a new lens. And then it's like, okay, what am I missing? What's this, what's the spiritual, what's a frequency that I'm now resonating at, right? And that's a super important thing that I'm with you. I think is completely disregarded, but I think a lot of people feel it. They experience it. And they don't know, right? Like going
mm,
to a concert, when you're there and someone's playing a song, just feel the energy there. That's a
mm,
frequency that's greater than anything in this, this physical realm, this material realm that we can experience. But you feel it. You don't know how to explain it, right? That's the one thing. It's like I
mm.
can't explain it, but it was, so yeah.
Yeah, and we need, yeah, that's right. Like getting back to that sort of beginner's mind, that looking at things fresh, and that's where a sort of a new understanding comes from as well. That's where creativity comes from. It comes from this ethereal future that you sort of got to be open for. It doesn't come from these sort of really set in stone ideas that you've already, that are so-called established in our world. We need to, really start looking and questioning what we're being told about how things actually function, and apply logic to it. And that's what that logos, that sort of um, real heart of the whole thing is, applying logic as best you can to the world around you,
Yeah, yeah. I
and
mean,
um,
yeah,
and finding connections to the world. And that's what it is. And I think that's what they've tried to do. They've tried to break our connections, um, break our understanding of where we are, who we are, and what we really need to do, and how we need to, function. Um and also the amount of abundance we can actually create for ourselves is yet to be, fully tapped. We've been sort of, they've basically been parasites through their fraudulent monetary system and things like that, that we need to,
yeah.
regain some of this logic. you
Yeah.
know
Well, and you're nailing it on the head, and I think a lot of people who, the people who have listened to mine and listened to yours, is in that same mindset. Is not that let me point the finger and be angry at everyone. Maybe there's that, but really, it's I'm not here for I'm not an accident. We're not here as an accident. This isn't an accident. This isn't just a speck of dust in space. Like there's something more here. And I want to understand. I want to, or rather, understand. I really want to make sense of this because I feel there's too many, as we would say, coincidences in my life to this be a coincidence. There's something bigger
yeah,
happening. And I don't know
yeah,
what it is. So people like yourself and just the amount of people out there now really stepping up and just asking questions, willing to have people on who maybe have insights on things and just going like, look, the way it's working clearly isn't working for a lot of people. It's not because, we're better, this and that. It's just a matter, as you said, logos of going like, we just want to find the truth of this, while we're here in this vessel for the time being, you know, let's try to make sense of this energy, this truth that we live in. And then how do we give to it, like you said, a positive negative charge, and not one's bad or one's good. It's just like how do we basically use this battery of self to feed into this system, like how do we give to it? And for me, I've just opened my eyes through the things of like, all right, well, like, how am I charging, right? Like we say in my meditations, like words of affirmation, do a kind act. Well, why are we doing these things? Oh, it's nice. Well, why is it nice? Just like a kid. Why? And you start to realize,
charges the battery.
huh?
It charges the battery, yeah, when
Oh,
you do all those
absolutely.
nice things, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And you start to really go, it feels good. Oh, like it gives you like this like warm feeling, like you feel like charged, like energized. Yeah, kind of. Like I feel like I'm uplifted. We use all these words and we don't even realize. And so you start going, oh, you're literally charging somebody up. But then, like,
Mm.
what is the reverse of that? And you see it a lot of times today. A lot of people who are in a fear state is taking people's energy of like, that friend you might have who always complains, like never, you can't have a conversation without it being like a complaining, and they try to
You know,
force.
like,
Yeah,
and then they say, yeah, like they're an energy vampire and things
yeah,
like that. So
exactly.
that's
Yeah,
exactly what they're doing. And the system as a whole is similar to that sort of friend as well.
yeah,
It's stealing our energy. So, what do we need to do to actually, draw some of that power out of that system? And
right.
if we do that, if enough of us do that, then the new system on the other side can be just unbelievably better. Something that we could not even probably imagine, if we were able to remove ourselves from this parasitic sort of system that we're in. So,
Yeah,
and raise other people's well-being up, bring back sort of this harmony with nature and more nature, you know what I mean?
yeah,
So
dude. Well, as we
mm,
say, like they're talking about food shortages, this and that, but you as a farmer know on your land, you can plant and have abundance of food. you can have
Mm.
so much, right? As you said, talk about feeding back and giving energy. You're literally giving energy to the soil in appreciation and care and kindness and love and going, I'm gonna do my best to give what I can to you, and then people start like a trickle effect, right? Like I even just hear people go, what are you doing? Are you planting? Yeah, I'm trying. Oh, that's really cool. And whether or not they do it, that's not the point, but it's a matter of, those interactions of the energy. And I'm not doing it for that reason, but it is one of those things
Mm.
that I start to experience and notice and, then have like like an observation of like, well, what was that experience like for me? Were they smiling? Like, this is how I think. I feel a lot of us do think this way is like, well, there's a good energy that left that experience. And hopefully, maybe they do something. And that's, as you said, lifting
Yeah.
each other up of like, oh, do you want to help? Or, hey,
Yeah.
let me, give you a radish, please. It's the least I can do. A friend of mine, he took his son and they planted a lettuce seed for, like 12 lettuce seeds and like went, once it, sprouted and came through, they went house to house and his like 2 3 year old son, he was like, oh, here's lettuce. And just the amount of energy that people felt, he was saying, because I had him on the podcast, was incredible. And this is
Mm.
like during the heat of all this, so people were fearful and people were just with open arms, just he said, smiling and just happy. And you don't, yes, it's the act, it's obviously the act itself, but it's also literally innately we know that that thing was grown. That child
Mm.
was a manifestation of something bigger, came to life, and it's so these things that we don't allow ourselves to really dive into, but we feel it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So that's something for me, yeah.
And the other thing, like I worked a sort of 9 to 5 government job as well, and the difference to from that to farming and producing something that you're actually happy to give to someone. You're giving them health.
Yeah,
You're giving them substance. You're enjoying the work. You're outside, or you're also when you refresh a bed, you've accomplished something, you've harvested something. There's all these little elements to it that a lot of people seem to miss when they're doing these
right.
jobs that just aren't fulfilling as well. So there's definitely that side of things when the work you do actually provides a real tangible wealth to someone else is really, really important.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, I'm with you 100%. And it's also, I think, the biggest takeaways for me is knowing that it's a journey, right? The outcome is never really satisfying. It really is the journey itself. When you
Mm.
know you're trying to give to the best that you can, you
Mm.
might be able to give a lot. Sometimes it's more of like, as you said, the positive, negative, like being on the receiving end, right? And that's okay. As you said,
Yeah.
you can always be a giver in life and never really know how to accept from people. And that can actually be more detrimental. You can
Mm.
drink a lot of water and get too much water. Like there's two, as we said, it's this duality, and we have to know how to structure ourselves through it. And where it really comes down to is, intuition, having a minute with present moment, nature, as they say, grounding, putting your feet in the soil sometimes, because
Yeah.
it's literally going to connect you with the universe and with the earth, and to be able to go, all right, I'm here, I'm now, what matters, how do I feel, where's my pain in my body, where's my mind going. And
Mm.
for a lot of people that can be scary if they've never done that, or it's they've been so distant from that, through the system that which we currently have. But yeah, man, is there anything else you want to add? I don't want to keep you too long, but I'm just loving this conversation.
No, that's probably it. But I think we've covered a fair bit. I mean, it's
Yeah,
been
man.
really good talking to you, man.
Dude, yeah, thank you for taking my offer and coming on here. And if there's anything else that you got coming up or anywhere that people can find you, if you can let us know, that'd be awesome.
Well, they can, yeah, check my channel out. It's LC King. They can also, I do a bit of a radio show called Iron Realm Media, so I go on there, yeah, a few times a week. So, and hang out with the guys. But that's about it. I haven't really been doing that many videos lately, just haven't had the time, but hopefully I'll get back into it. And
Awesome, man. Well,
yeah,
thank you again for your time. And, in the future, hopefully we can do this again, man. I really appreciate it.
yeah, love to. Thanks, man.
Awesome. All right. Thanks. All right. See you guys.